Hi, everyone. Welcome to our second episode of On Record. I'm Chad Herzog, Executive Director of Arizona Arts Live, and I'm so happy and proud and pleased to introduce Adriana Gallego, Executive Director of the Arts Foundation for Tucson and Southern Arizona. Adriana, how are you today?
Doing great, Chad. Thank you so much for having us today.
Maybe we could spend a little bit of time talking about the Arts Foundation for Tucson and Southern Arizona and just a little bit about what you all do there for us.
The Arts Foundation for Tucson and Southern Arizona is a designated local arts agency for the city of Tucson and Pima County. We are beholden to residents from throughout all of Southern Arizona and very explicitly the creative workforce that makes a living here. So when we think about Southern Arizona, as I mentioned earlier, our mandate is to work with and provide services and resources for organizations, artists, communities that reside south of the Gila River to the edges of the Rio Colorado, southeast Arizona, and all the rural communities, 7 sovereign tribal nations, and all the way down across the international border. In 2016, the Tucson Pima Arts Council made the decision to become the Arts Foundation for Tucson and Southern Arizona so that we could be good neighbors, understanding that residing and doing business in the heart of our mid-sized metropolitan city here in Tucson, that we had more access to resources that we could actually help bridge and disseminate them throughout our communities. So we're using that portal, that access, and that agency to be able to be good neighbors and good stewards for communities throughout all of Southern Arizona. So in terms of the services that we provide, we have a whole portfolio that includes managing the public art program for the city of Tucson and Pima County through their 1% for Art ordinances, through development and construction projects and transportation. We also are a resource provider by way of providing financial assistance and grants and awards to individual artists, to organizations, collectives, and affiliates that are producing art programs, to businesses and nonprofit arts organizations that have an explicit mission to provide arts and culture services. And we also have very much a complementary thread of providing professional development services for the creative workforce in our community.
I wonder how much this job may be different. Obviously, you stepped into it during the pandemic, and it was early on in the pandemic, but how different this job is because we're in a global pandemic right now.
It's been quite interesting. It's very humbling, and in many ways, it's been a privilege, simply because I was able to come into this position with a fresh start. So I was able to jump in with all of the energy and excitement and creativity that I had at my fingertips as I was entrusted to steward the organization, not just through a pandemic and help our communities through this emergency situation, but also ensure that we are viable and sustainable in an accessible and equitable way into the future. I also want to acknowledge that I feel like everybody started a new job during the pandemic. The difference and the privilege that I had was that it was new to me. So I got to see things a little bit differently. When I'm going into a new community, even if it's a community that is my home, like Tucson and the desert and Southern Arizona, coming back after so many years, it was really important for me to lead with the perspective of listening, learning, and then taking those those ideas, those stories, that feedback, and start to imagine what the future could be. What was different this time is that I didn't have the time. I didn't have that privilege of being able to be with my community and get to know them right then and there. And it really was just about rolling up the sleeves and attending to this emergency. So I took action right away with our team. It was about raising funds. It was about making sure that whatever resources we could get into the hands of our artists and our arts organizations and the creative cognitive creative workforce. We just wanted to make sure that we were getting people the financial resources that they needed immediately.
What are your thoughts on things we could be doing as a county to make sure that one, we have that labor force, or that we can bring those people back, or just we're going to have people to help us make art again?
Well, we have no shortage of creative minds in Arizona. I'll tell you that much. And particularly in Southern Arizona. And this is where artists and the creative workforce really gets to shine in rebuilding. The ability to make beauty out of nothing, or to take the ordinary and turn it into something extraordinary. Artists have the capacity to reflect our life back to us and imagine new and different futures, and they help us think differently about that, the way that we see the world. They also help us reflect on what has happened and what we can learn and glean from that. In those moments, I'm reminded that it's not just the product and the beauty and the experience that artists have that they bring to the forefront, but it's also that creative cognitive labor that they bring to the table, the thinking that goes into being able to detect those nuances is something that we really need in all sectors of our society. So if we can build a movement and encourage our communities in all of the different sectors, in health, in housing, in education, if we can use that kind of creative thinking to model the way we approach solving issues into the future, I feel like we will be in a better place. More than ever right now, we need folks that can bring two elements that may seemingly be in conflict with each other, and build harmony out of it. And so I think that our creative workforce can really be at the forefront of being able to help us rebuild. What we need now are creative solutions. Leave no ideas behind. And truly, our future is going to be powered by the scope of our imagination, and we cannot afford to conduct business as usual. So we have to think creatively. We have to think differently.
So you speak about creativity and thinking differently, imagination. What's the most exciting thing you've seen come out of this thus far?
I'll tell you some personal stories. What I see in my conversations with artists and arts educators, I've seen people that have had a whole career arc and are very established artists working in a very specific medium their whole life, and to have an opportunity to learn new technologies for them and to be able to imagine themselves integrating and teaching classes through Zoom, and being able to create curriculums and see themselves really build their educational portfolio, but also be able to join their students in their home. To me, that was really exciting. When I think of our creative aging communities, and to know that people are still learning and developing new skill sets and adapting in real time, to me, that's really exciting, and it gives me hope that as things continue to come up, as challenges continue to come up, artists are there to take the helm and to continue to innovate in ways that they never even thought was possible. We've seen cooking classes, and we've seen interactive exhibits, and really safe ways for people to participate outside with digital projections. I guess I have to say that there's been, high usage of technology for sure.
Yeah, for sure, right? Maybe we could talk a little bit about this opportunity to rebuild and making sure that equity and new models are a part of this rebuild, that we don't go back to the way things were. Do you have anything to say on that? Or? I mean, I know you have stuff to say on that. I'm sorry. I expect you to say a lot on this.
No, that's okay. Well, if I could go back and say, like, what has been one of the most exciting things that I've seen, it's actually getting to see the fast paced way in which people have been trying to right size an equitable distribution of funds during an emergency. We've seen a lot of movement in philanthropy, through foundations and in public agencies, rethinking their regranting models, so that distribution of resources can reach the communities that have been disproportionately and systemically affected by economic inequities, by social inequities, political inequities. And we saw the depth and breadth of that sustained systemic impact come to light during the pandemic. We're living in an era where we really can't go back to the way things were. The crisis we lived through in 2020 wasn't just about the pandemic. It's been very dangerous to be a person of color in our country, and very specifically to be a Black woman or a Black man or a Black child, because of the racist and systemic I don't know how to say that. Sorry.
It's hate. Yeah, it's hate,
Yeah,
right? It's hate.
it's hate.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's why it's so hard to say when we think of it being 2020, and that we still have to say it.
I feel really, even as somebody who has seen and who is experiencing this moment, and has a deep connection and a deep intentionality to be able to do my part to fix inequities that we see. I'm, just in speaking with you right now, I'm seeing the extent of my how words really can't even describe what has been happening and the impact that it's been having on people. And I feel ill-equipped to even talk about it cogently right now, because it is such a there has to be such a huge social healing and reparation and remediation that has to take place for all of our communities. And so I, I have hope that, we can do our part to contribute to the greater whole. I have hope that in the past year, I have seen some changes take place, and we can't go back to the way things were. And so I'm hopeful that we can use those lessons and that energy to keep that momentum going. We can't forget our communities that have, mixed immigration status. We can't forget our communities who live in danger because of the way they look on the outside, or because of the way that because of the economic conditions they were born into. Um, there's definitely a lot of social healing, and if we can do our part in contributing to that reparation, I think we'll be in a better spot as a community.
I so agree with you, and we can't forget that it starts here at home. That we're not going to see this change happen statewide, globally, or nationally, globally, until we start here to make that and those reparations happen. And that's, for me, that's what I'm so excited about with the direction that you're helping foster and take the foundation to the way that we're speaking about the value of arts and culture in Southern Arizona, and that it's more than just entertainment. You've practiced and you've had an artistic practice for a long time. And my fear is that when you step into positions like you have now and your practice goes away, or you're not able to practice the way you once were able to. And so I really want to know, how are you able to practice now? Are you still making art? What are you doing? How are you an artist during a pandemic? And how are you an artist when you're not making art? And tell me about your practice.
Two things: gardening and Excel sheets.
Gardening and Excel sheets.
Yes. So I really love to dive into data analysis and see what stories emanate from building relationships between numbers and where they come from. So I find that to be a very interesting link back into creativity for me. Also, I love, thinking about different ways in which I can be like a good artist at the service of other artists, looking at it as an art form in and of itself that way. Gardening has been an especially meditative practice for me lately. So to answer your question first, is like, no, I have not picked up a brush in years. It doesn't mean that I'm not imagining and getting excited about building out our studio space here in our garage. But right now, I think I really want to use that creative cognitive labor that artists bring to the table to think about ways in which we can create more equitable systems. And one of the things that I'm doing right now that relates to gardening, because it really relates back to land, is I'm building a labyrinth outside of our home, just, in the dirt, using pavers. It's taken me a really, really long time, but going to use it as a space to continue to think through some ideas and remember our connection to the land, and that we have to be good stewards, not just to the land, but also to the people that inhabit it.
Mm-hmm.
So it keeps me grounded, if you will.
So, Adriana, I have one more question. We at Arizona Arts Live have been talking about how we're ready for this renaissance that is happening now, and hopefully really about to just blow up and go for in Tucson. What do you see Tucson's or Southern Arizona's renaissance looking like?
Everybody will be vaccinated and safe, and we will have an opportunity to convene in safe places again. One of the beautiful things that Tucson has is that our artists and our communities are very closely tied together. And there's this sense of care and stewardship that people have for one another. We've seen artists really, rise to the occasion and help each other through contributing to mutual aid projects and arts organizations opening up their spaces in ways that were probably unimaginable before, but pivoting and making sure that people still have access to artistic experiences. So I believe that we'll take the lessons learned from the pandemic and also build a more equitable, a stronger, more integrated community. I really do hope that building on the innovation that we have here in Tucson and in Southern Arizona, and that creativity that we have, that we can really find ways to connect with different sectors in our community, so that same creativity shines through in some of those other industries.
Yeah, nice. Adriana, thanks so much for your time tonight. Really great to spend some time with you, getting to know each other, hopefully better. Really, really excited for the work that you have done since returning to Southern Arizona, but also really excited for what we can be doing ahead as we look to making this our home and the place that we all know that it can be.
Thank you so much, Chad. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, and if we can be of service, just let us know.